Giuseppe Perrone, co-founder of Rent Capital Partners. Good morning and thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning to you. Thank you for having me.
So I was wondering, what are your thoughts on all that happened on Wall Street in the past 2 weeks? I'm talking about retail investors versus hedge funds because you're a co-founder of a hedge fund. So I was wondering, what are your thoughts and do you think it makes any sense?
Actually, I think that what happened in the market in the last couple of weeks is something that is something that should have been anticipated. I mean, we've seen retail investors getting into the market at a very fast clip, and in the end, short squeezes is something that actually been around for a very long time. So I think that's actually something healthy. The fact that even hedge funds could find themselves squeezed in such a way, I think there is a lot of, I would say, good things on that side. The issue, of course, is more generally how this is going to basically morph into. Is it going to morph into something problematic for the market? And that's been averted completely by the fact that Robinhood had actually been able to finance themselves in a very easy manner, and I would say that's something that is very reassuring.
On the other hand, I was wondering, do you owe any of the stocks that I was just talking about a few seconds ago, or I'm referring to MC, GameStop, BlackBerry?
No, not at all. We are, neither on the long nor on the short side. It's something that couldn't be happening here simply because we have a very simple rule is that we don't, enter into a short position if short interest is, above, let's say, mid-teens levels, which is clearly far from the 85% that we've seen at the maximum on GameStop. And clearly, if you think of it, that's a faulty risk management process that happened in some of these hedge funds, and clearly, in a way, they I don't want to say they deserve to be squeezed. That's certainly not the case, but clearly they took a risk, and for me, it's pretty healthy the fact that investors, even retail or professional, could cause something like that to happen, because that's not normal. You shouldn't be shorting a stock with an 85% short interest.
I was wondering if you've noticed any kind of gaps when it comes to the US financial system. Of course, based on this story, and certainly, do you believe there are going to be any regulatory measures?
Yeah, there will be hearings very soon. We know that. I think that the story is very linear in a way. We haven't seen an abuse from Robinhood in any way. I think these guys actually had an issue, and the issue was that their regulator and their central counterpart is actually asked them for a $3 billion margin call, and they had to respond to that on a dime, and that's actually what caused the situation to spiral into the restrictions that they have decided on Thursday last week. It seems very far away, but it's just last week. And this actually proved that the system and the plumbing in the system actually worked well. Whereas I would say some critics of what happened actually attributed this to, I would say, a will of Robinhood to protect some investor. That's certainly not true, and I believe it will be very easily demonstrated in the hearings and in any kind of study that could be done on this. And what's really striking in this story is the speed at which this has been solved. Clearly, if you think of it, Robinhood had an issue on Thursday, and basically they were able to raise $1 billion overnight, and then another $2.4 billion on Monday. And basically this actually normalized entirely the situation. So and of course, like we're seeing today, there are no restrictions on the stocks any longer.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a news story today. I was wondering, how do you create your strategy when it comes to investments? Which are the markets that you're focused on, and of course, why?
Sure. Well, thanks for the question. I think clearly we try to have a core concentrated portfolio of high conviction stocks on the long side. But if you look at markets today, clearly where we see opportunities. And you were mentioning before the Ford story. is clear in the, in some of the technology areas that are not, let's say, in a state of fraudiness, I would say. So you can see, in general, technology, especially in the States, there actually still, there's plenty of opportunities there. So some of the things that we like at the moment are, semiconductor industry in the States, and more than the manufacturer, I would really point to the, I'll say the equipment manufacturer, and the reason is clearly something that you were mentioning before, the shortages that we have on the semi, actually pushing the manufacturers to build up capacity, and the beneficiaries of that will clearly be the equipment manufacturers, which are actually building the infrastructure for the manufacturer in order to deliver those chips to, I would say, very different end usages and end users. Historically, this is, let's say, an industry that actually was depending on telco and PC, and at the moment it's actually much wider than that. Go from the automotive industry until, of course, the of course the 5G interconnectivity, Internet of Things, and then we'll see AI and, of course, cloud computing. So all of that lead us to think really that this this subset of this of the industry is actually still having very nice prospects over the next probably couple of years.
I'm so happy you brought up the story about a chip stocks shortage. The chip shortage is not the stocks shortages, but the semiconductor shortage. Certainly, it's been extremely interesting to see the rise of the semiconductors. I was wondering, are you preoccupied about this demand and supply issue?
I mean, we have seen this happening, and I will say that chips have become an extremely important part of everything in everything that's produced, and I will say I think it will be resolved pretty quickly. And we've seen an enormous amount of capital put into the fabrication processes. So I tend to think that this will be solved in a matter of a few quarters. So I'm not overly worried. But on the other side, I think there is this kind of a super cycle in a semiconductor industry, and that's what I was referring to. That's why I believe this is really clearly our favorite industry and sub-industry, I would say, at the moment. But no, I'm not overly worried on this.
So do you also look at European stocks and different sectors? Do you think that this major discrepancy, this major spread between US markets and European markets can be diminished in 2021?
I think so, yeah, absolutely. The European markets follows a different rhythm, I would say, but clearly, if we see on the chip side, and we still, even in Europe, we have some great companies. I can name one like ASML, for example, and it's a fantastic, manufacturer of photolithography systems for chips, and it's a worldwide leader. But also, I would say in Europe, given the current situation, I will really tend to think that the financials are still an area where we should see some significant upside, and clearly they've been on the tier for over the last few days and maybe a few months. But if you think of it with I'll say an economy that is actually supposed to feel the benefit of the plans that have been devised by both central banks and governments, and just think even you're based in Italy, but in Italy you have a recovery fund that will be around 10% of GDP impacting over 5 years, which is huge, of course. And if you add to that the potential of say an economy recovering and even interest rates going up, at that point, this could be I would say a perfect scenario for European banks, for example, and this is something that clearly we are very very bullish on at the moment. And on looking farther down, I would say probably the some consumer plays could and I'll say consumer discretionaries could be interesting. You have to be careful on a couple of things here. Clearly, there are some that are taking the hit from the pandemic. Some other are benefiting from I would say the e-commerce position they've built, and for some of those, the valuations are pretty stretched. So clearly, we have to be a little bit careful on this. And finally, I would say, if you want to, someone wanted to look at something a little bit more, I'd say after COVID, I would say probably on the airline side, low-cost airlines, and they will be beneficiary of let's say, a recovery process, and clearly Ryanair stands out as a fantastic play, and they have a wide and deep moat, and clearly they will be benefiting from a reduced capacity in the industry.
You just mentioned central banks, and I was wondering, what's the central bank's role in the asset pricing, or do you think they have a role?
That's a very nice question. So, yeah, they do have a role. I think this is probably the latest installment of, I would say, a ultra-loose monetary policies. I mean, if you think of Robin Hood and the situation that has been created there, clearly this is something that these guys are actually say us proposing, suggesting that you could actually trade with no commissions, commission-free trading, which is something that in a way they can only afford because capital is is abundant, available, and basically it's infinite. And I was reflecting a little bit ahead of this program on what happened the last couple of weeks, and clearly I was struck by one of the of Vlad Tenev, which is Robinhood's CEO, interviews when he said, I'm sorry, we don't have infinite capital, but actually now they do, and that's really where the risk is. I mean, yes, they will central banks through their policies, both conventional and unconventional, they are, I would say, spurring market agents to take on more and more risk. And in the end, this might very well lead to, I would say, a misallocation of capital of gigantic proportions and potentially mispricing. And when you have mispricing, it means that basically there is a difference, a disconnect, if you will, between the price of the instruments and the fundamentals they're supposed to reflect. When you have that, then typically there's a risk on the bubble.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Giuseppe Perrone, co-founder of Varani Capital Partners. Thank you for joining us, and have a great weekend.
Thank you. Have a great weekend too.